And we're back.
Just like that, we're back and we're moving now into our second topic of the morning. And this one is all about the Belize Zoo. Now, Hurricane Lisa did a low to a lot of places across this country, and especially so central Belize, which is Belize City and the Belize District. And we boast a lot about the zoo and the animals being in their natural habitat.
We love our zoo.
We love our zoo. It's the best little zoo in the world. But there are things that we need to know about it. We've got the folks in to tell us all about it. Jamal Andrewin, how you say the last word?
Bohn. Jamal Andrewin.
All right, Jamal Andrewin Bohn. He's actually a conservation program manager, and Roxana Lemus, lead zookeeper. Everybody know Roxana. So
everybody know Roxana.
We know you're going to be good. So guys, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Just hearing about the zoo and what's going on there at this particular point, it's actually heartbreaking. It's not necessarily, they're not like you ruin. It's not ruin that you don't know where the animals then there. It's just that we need to build things back up for these animals to once again be in their natural habitat. Good morning again and welcome. And let's go there. What's going on at the zoo?
Morning again, and thanks for having us. So we're officially at week 3 now. It's 3 Wednesdays since Lisa took a trek across Belize, and as you said, Jan, it wasn't ruined, but it's pretty close. It was devastating. It's much more damage than we had obviously hoped and anticipated. We prepared as much as we could, and the worrying thing is, it was a category 1, just like Richard and Earl. It's these supposedly weaker hurricanes that are wrecking Belize City and these areas. So that's that's something we need to stick a pin in for future, climate resilience and so on. But right now, our reality is that the zoo, every single habitat that we have 50 individual habitats, meaning even if you say 1 or 2 or 3 jaguars in our area, each, if they're in their own little space, their own little natural area, that's a habitat. So we have 50 of those that are operational, and every single one of them got touched in some way, some more than others. So we have about 23 that were kind of like superficially. So we got maybe some trees got a little bit shaken, some vegetation fell, but a quick clean, and the keepers doing some infrastructural checks gave it the green light. They're good to go. The animals are okay. They can contain them. It doesn't inhibit their natural behavior, so they're good. So 23 of those, 17 had a little bit more damage. So that, for example, would be in the higher end. That's the jaguar. That's Lindo and Sylvia. Martin and Sylvia's habitats, and those are 2 of 10 that were devastated. Like you almost have to start over from scratch, and another 17 that were kind of midway. Like they're with a few couple days and moving some vegetation out and doing some patching, you could probably restore them relatively quickly.
The last time you were here for, I think it was Animal Day, and we did talk about preparedness and if in case a hurricane, and unfortunately it did happen. So while we were hoping that it wouldn't be as bad as it actually was, what did the zoo do to start the preparedness when the first initial warning came out?
Roxana?
So our preparedness for like natural disasters like this or hurricanes starts like way before, but because we, like the keeper, the animal care and management department is responsible for training the animals into going into different flight cages or into moving them from areas, because they also use that training for medical purposes. So when we need to check them, so we move them already, so they're already used to that behavior. So most of them are already trained to go into different areas, so it's not hard to move them from one area to the other. So it's just like to lure them in. So with positive reinforcement, we get all that done. But before, like 2 days before the hurricane, what we had to do was, for the animals that don't already have a hurricane shelter attached to their habitat, we had to move them to our clinic area. So what took us a bit more time was to put up the cubicles that we have, that we put into the commissary area, move the birds especially into like the quarantine area that we have. So it took us like a day and a half to move all the birds.
And just the birds?
Mostly the birds and some of the like smaller mammals like our kinkajous or an eater, like branchy, the little porcupine, the macaws. So all those cubicles there in the clinic were assembled. So after the hurricane and all that, we just like take them down and put them up. And so they're like makeshift that we put them
So,
there.
you know, it seems like a very tedious process to try and get these animals. I mean, I'm a freak.
No, you'd
When I
also-
saw the snakes, I was like, whoop.
Right, so you also have to be strategic as to which animals
Yes.
would
Correct.
go where.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and then segment them up because
Yeah.
you're this type of, you know, you're this species. Now, is this the worst we've seen for the zoo? Or there must have
It's-
been a worse time? Or
No,
what's the situation there?
Our indicator, our ceiling, I guess, has always been Hurricane Richard, which was 2010, which, you know, similar path, similar strength, similar path through central Belize, completely wrecked the zoo, and that took us about 5 weeks to recover from. Initially, I keep saying, you know, in the first few days of the hurricane, before we really got to every corner of the zoo, we were like, it's not as bad as Richard. We can, you know,
We
worse
can
than
fix
Earl.
this, we can fix this.
But honestly, at this point, there may have been more dramatic, like more visual damage to, like, so a vivid memory a lot of people might have of Hurricane Richard was you walk into the zoo and the entire king vulture habitat was
Down.
crushed, like someone
Yes.
sat on it.
Yeah.
So we didn't have anything as dramatic as that. The jaguar ones came closest. We had saber trees falling, but honestly, now 3 weeks into it, the amount of mat vegetation and debris that we've been hauling, and not without help. We've had tremendous help from every corner of the country, people coming and giving, you know, physical hours, manual hours for days. And we are still not in any position to open. We're not
my
opening
gosh.
in a month.
Yeah.
We're now looking at potentially, maybe by mid-December, we can be open. So it's in some ways it's as bad and worse than Richard. Just because of the sheer amount of vegetation and, you know, minor patchwork and so on.
Yeah.
And the zoo has grown in 12 years. You know, it's the same footprint, but we have larger habitats for the animals. We have more animals in our care that we've tried to give their own spaces. So there's a lot more infrastructure to maneuver around vegetation that has flourished. A colleague of ours put it to us that it's in a way we're our own worst enemy because the vegetation that is vital to the animals and makes the best little zoo so attractive works against us in situations like this.
Yeah.
It's what causes all the damage ultimately.
No animals lost.
Thankfully not.
Thankfully.
How do you move the monkeys?
So the howlers and the spider monkeys, they already have their hurricane shelters attached to their habitats. So it's a routine for them. Every day they get locked up in their little holding areas for an overnight, just in case of any like storms or anything
squalls or whatnot.
Whatever happens, they're already in there.
And
The same thing with our big cats, like the jaguars and the pumas. They all have that routine that every day they come into their holding areas for the night, and then in the morning they get released back into their
But
habitat.
thank God they're not going to know the hard. Here's one.
No, it's all, as Roxy mentioned before, it's positive reinforcement, which boils one simple word: food. So they are fed in those management areas every night.
And then they go.
So it's almost like the dinner bell, right? The sliding door goes up, and they're in there because they know it's dinner time.
That's the way we used to bring chickens back in the coop.
There you go.
We used to get a pan, and you put rocks in there. Hey,
they come.
chicken, they come.
Same concept.
They're not afraid. But let's get into what is needed. You're here today because we need a lot of help.
Yes.
What is needed? What is most important?
So I'll go through what we've gotten already. So I gave you kind of the quick stats of what's been damaged. I mentioned we've gotten immense support. We've gotten everybody at this point. We've had Sacred Heart Junior College. We've had multiple resorts and tour guide associations that have sent people to volunteer. We've had, you know, family of co-workers that have come in, and we've also had a lot of in-kind support. You know, people donating the usual, like we did in the pandemic. So fresh fruit, meat, and so on, veggies, and also financial. So that it's basically been because we're now kind of saddling multiple fronts here. We're in a month where we would have been making income because apart from being a wildlife center, we are a tourism destination, as you all know. November should have been good for us like it is for everyone else, but now we've lost a month of operation. So the gap, there's a vacuum or there's a huge hole as far as money we would have been making for our day-to-day operational expenses. So animal care, you know, the feeding, any exhibit improvements, staff, salaries, utilities, the light bill still needs to be paid. And then on top of that, we have the repairs that need to happen. So we've had, again, thankfully, a lot of support as far as people donating. Right now, like literally today up until the end of November, we also have a matching fund that's going. That was launched by a donor had pledged 10,000 US to be matched. So everything up to that will be doubled, basically. So people have been contributing to that, which has been excellent, both here in Belize and abroad. So that's one way people can give if you're not able to physically come to the zoo and push a wheelbarrow or rake or cut down some limbs. People have been giving, financially or in kind. But apart from that, I come back to the volunteer aspect. If you're in a position to give a day or more, and you're able to get to the zoo, get in touch with us, and we can arrange for you all to come in and assist. So right now it's the manpower, the manual labor that we need to just move all that debris out of the zoo.
So manpower is the most important thing at this
point.
How
at a percentage, how much have you already managed to clean up in the past 3 weeks?
So right now, every pathway in the zoo you can walk on. Which was a stark contrast to the first day after hurricane. You had to walk over so many things. There was not a clear pathway in sight. So every pathway can be walked. It's just now that there's debris on the sides that need to be hauled out. There's trees, and this, if for people wondering why the zoo not open yet, we have a lot of tour operators that are,
asking,
biting, chomping at the bit to bring their guests. It's not safe as far as, overhanging trees, limbs that need to be brought down, animals still being put back into their habitats. We're doing a head count just before we came on, and there's still 10 or 11 habitats that are still pending, and those are like the ones you saw, the jaguar ones that need a lot of work.
They need a lot of work.
So most animals are back in their spaces. There's just some that are waiting that take a bit more than a couple patches and a couple little sweeps to get them ready. So it's mostly the pathways are all clear, but there's still just a lot of vegetation to haul out.
And one of the things, like we said, makes the zoo just the prettiest zoo ever. I will say it's the best zoo ever. Is the fact that it has so much vegetation. Looking back at, and I'm looking at this video right now, has it been taken away, the beauty of the zoo? Because there's a lot of trees that are just down.
We won't sugarcoat it, it has. And again, this is unfortunately eerily familiar to us. After Earl, after Richard, you come to the zoo and you suddenly, if one of those you take for granted, you realize how much the vegetation provided sun cover, because now it's just like
sun and hot.
Yes, and we're in November. Imagine when March, April, May roll around, dry season. So it will take a few years for the
trees to get back, and the vegetation to actually be back to normal.
Exactly. So again,
which would be another part of the recovery, right? Planting
absolutely.
trees.
So this is something else we were talking about on the drive down, that we have to start thinking about how to plant strategically. We can't have, as beautiful as they are, these big emergent trees and canopy covers need to be, managed better. They can't be above all the habitats where they pose a threat. We need to ensure that there's enough shade and cover in the habitats for the animals as well. So there's another aspect that you rightly pointed out.
So right now, at this particular point, one of the most important things needed is to get those pathways cleared to as best as possible. So manpower is actually what we need. Let's talk about the stresses of these animals having to go through these things. We know that, naturally for them, they move to higher ground, or they move to where they need to move to get out of harm's way in the event of a storm. So what's that like, having to deal with these animals, especially after a storm? They've been locked up. Maybe they're used to it, yes, but they're wild animals.
So we do notice that they get stressed because they get moved from an area where they're so comfortable living in, and us like moving them to an area where they're not very comfortable or is smaller than their habitat that they're used to. They do get stressed. So we had like our anteater, for example, and our parrots, Archie, the anteater, he was like on our top priority list to move him back to his habitat right after the hurricane. So his habitat was the first one we worked on, because it never needed a lot of work, just mainly like a little bit of patching, and he was okay to go back. So he was the first one to go back, and then our parrots, because they were in smaller areas, and they're so used to, because they were placed in smaller areas, they all had their own separate little cubicles. So and they're all used to living as a flock together.
Yeah.
So because they're very social birds, so we noticed that they were getting stressed too, so we had to like quickly move them back. But like the other ones, like Martin, for example, where his habitat is completely down right now, we had to move him to another area because, you know, like their well-being is also our priority. So we had to move Martin to a area where we had beside one of the other jaguars, Chicky Bull. So they're sharing the same habitat but not together. So they shift, they get like one day in, one day out into the large habitat.
I love that you know them by name. I mean, I know you would, right? Because you deal with them every single day. But it gives them the personality that they are affected by the aftermath of the hurricane. So in terms of donations and manual labor and so forth, if you were able to get everything started by mid-December, you still have your staff, you still have everybody that comes in to pitch in. What would be the first initial event that the zoo would have? Because I know you, and you do boo at the zoo, and you do things for November, and you do things for December. So I would imagine that you would have a grandiose opening for the zoo.
It may be, well, it might be a softer opening than you're picturing, just because we really need to get the day in. But speaking of events, though, no, we do have one. So I brought most of the bad news. Roxana can provide some good news that not everything has been frozen or collapsed. There was a really wonderful event in the works for many months that Roxana has spearheaded that is happening this Sunday, regardless of our opening or unopening. So
So what's going to happen?
So International Jaguar Day is on November 29th. So, you know, I work with jaguars, I run. So I thought, you know, I should combine both things and make one event. So then I did this run for jaguars, 5 miles and 10K and 10 miles. 5K and 10 miles. So it's presented by Travelers Liquors. They're one of our biggest sponsors for the event. So because it has been in the months of planning, so I've started planning it way back. We even thought we were gonna get a hurricane. So it's still happening this Sunday on the 27th. I got a lot of people asking, was it postponed? Was it canceled? I'm like, no, it's still happening because practically I just need a small space for the runners to line up and go. So the run was to raise awareness of these, that's the purpose of the run, to raise awareness of these wild cats, these big cats, you know, despite them being these enigmatic creatures, they face threats out there, which are habitat loss and loss of prey, and get into conflict with ranchers for livestock. So I just wanted to raise awareness for these animals. So I'm very thankful, you know, that we got a lot of support. I thought it was gonna be like a very small event, and then we started to promote this event, and now I ended up with 134 runners signing up for the event. I have 114. I have 114 of those runners are in person, and then I had 24 virtual runners. So how that works, you run anywhere you are, a treadmill or anything. So it turned out really good, and I'm happy, you know, for all the support that we got, and all the monies that we get from this event were to build Martin a pond. So now he will get his pond, and he also needs a new habitat too. So you know, it's still benefits the cause.
But you said the run is going to be Sunday, right?
Yes.
So is there any other, like, can people still sign up?
No, so the registration is closed, unfortunately.
134 John.
Yeah, but you could do it in person. And that's the good thing. So you could actually do it in person. And so I'd say, you know what, if you're going to register, you could still do it in person. You got people at PG like run, can't come up by you there. And there are a lot of people who follow the Belize Zoo internationally, and they might want to chip in as well. So I think...
Well, and that's the beauty they have.
Yeah, they have. We've had most of the virtual runners, they are, persons that love the zoo but are not in country and they still wanted to support, so they did that. Unfortunately, the for the run it's closed because I had to like pre-order medals and t-shirts, so all that took me some time to get, so I had to get exact number of those. But they still can visit the website, the totaltimebelize.com, and if they want, they can still donate towards the cause. So that is still there.
That's nice.
A run for Jaguars, 5K and 10 miles.
And then what should happen as well? There should be a national rugs day for Jaguars. All the schools, all the workplaces, and you put $1 in it. So you pledge $1 just to wear your jeans, but you're actually supporting the Belize Zoo.
You wear a t-shirt with your favorite animal.
Wear a t-shirt with your favorite animal.
John, can you champion that for us? Can you take that and lead with it?
Wear a collar that resembles your favorite animal just to pledge a support. And it's only $1. Now imagine that. So these are some of the things that can happen.
You need to coordinate.
There we go.
But Jamal, Roxy, thank you both so much for coming in. We do hope that the recovery continues as quickly as possible before mid-December.
Yes,
I would hope. And of course, if you would like to donate to the zoo, give your time, you can always contact Jamal at the Education Center. He'll be happy to take your calls.
Thank you guys.
With that, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back with Tacos Fest.
Yeah, she scolded me because
John
I've never been to a Tacos Fest.
So he under this one, you're
is
doing
this weekend gonna be the weekend? We'll tell you.
Stay tuned to find out.
We'll be right back.